Hello, we're back looking at improvised weapons. Last week we were looking at the belt, so that was lots of spinning around and hitting yourself on the head if you've had a go at it probably. This week we're moving on to two-handed flexible, and our archetypal weapon for that is we're actually going to use the hoodie in this case, but you know, cloaks, coats, anything of that kind of tablecloth, blanket, any of those can kind of work with these same kind of principles. Now some of it, as I said, you can do with the long flexible if you hold it between your arms. So we'll cover that bit first and then we'll have a look at a bit more what I can actually do with this because it's got a bit of material in it as well. So the way I'm going to do this, I'm going to hold the shoulders so that I have a length of material between my hands, much in the same way I could do with a belt. And we're going to ignore all of this bit for now and just look at this little bit I'm holding between my hands. So the first thing I can do is, I can use this in and of itself. If I just pull this apart and a punch comes in, I can use that to knock out the way, but it's not particularly effective. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull it apart as I go into block, and the bit in the middle kind of snaps taut and becomes really solid just for a moment. So in comparison, if I do this without just pushing it across, and if I do it with a little flick, I get a considerable amount more force to move him out of the way. So in this case, the attack can come in, can move that out of the way, and then look to strike. It's just kept me potentially a bit safer, particularly if you were wielding a knife or something. The difference being, rather than having to get in here where my hand is near to the knife, I can be here where my hand is quite away from any form of blade. So I've got that option. The other thing I can do is once an attack comes in, if I block this, I've also then got options to wrap and control. We move into arm bars, but again, if he's got a knife, I have a nice control over that weapon, at least temporarily, pardon me. So that was it. As I said, you can do that with the belt or you can do it with the coat. The other nice thing about the coat is we have all this extra material, and that gives me options I can do. Now, the first option we can look at that's nice and interesting is we can use it just to make our opponent flinch. It doesn't matter how much training you've had or how much you know it's a bit of material, that will still make you back off a little bit, or at least close your eyes a second because there's something coming out your face, especially if in this case it's got a zip on it and that might take your eye out. But that's great because that gives me the opportunity to potentially, boom, come in with a kick whilst he's recovering. I can even be like repositioning and coming in with a solid hit whilst he's still repositioning. So I've got that option of the flick option. I've also got the option that whilst this is shaking, all of his attention is on here, and I can actually move my body considerably from where the actual attack is then going to come from, because he's still focusing here, even though my body's moved around. Now, if he decides to attack, that's great, because it means he's probably coming for something that is no longer centre mass, which is going to give me plenty of time for moving. Other options is that whilst he's focusing on here, I can be coming in things like that from the other side. It seems ridiculous, particularly from your vantage. Get somebody else to try it and you will find out how annoying it is to actually be able to confuse your opponent as to where you are actually standing. But as well as all of that, I have other options when it comes to combining these. So if an attack comes out, I can take my block here. If I then take that squish across the face, you're already off balance. From here I can body check, I can move in to throw, any of those kind of options I've got there. So I've still got this ability to keep him guessing, keep him annoyed, and if he does come into attack, I've got quite a solid defense that I can put in there. I've also got the option, although this, you need to make sure this is going to work, is that I can throw this if I need to. Simply placing it over my opponent. So it may be a case where if we've gone back and forth a couple of times, so we're already kind of both looking for the next way in, that over his head gives me enough time to get in. Potentially I can look to grapple, claim the head, or just strike. Again, a quick chassis frontal to the nads, or wait for you to pull it off and smash your nose. Any of those are nice simple options. I can also use it to assist my grappling, and particularly a nice one is if an attack comes in, if I take this aiming for the inside, I can then use it. It's actually got a nice hood. I can just pop that over the head, How annoying is that? Yeah, and then all my usual kind of control and stuff that I can do hooking over the head. So, although not greatly offensive, its ability to distract and its ability to help me defend makes it a very good offhand weapon. Much like the cloak is a great offhand weapon for something like side sword. It's also good because a lot of people wear coats, hoodies, jumpers, whatever. They don't seem like a weapon, they're something you're likely to have on hand, so they're worth putting a bit of time and effort to seeing what advantages these can actually give you. So that takes us to the end of two-handed flexible. So we've really only got 2 more sessions that I want to cover in this little introduction to improvised weapons. One of them we're going to look at next week, which is going to be incidentals, things that you can't really use as weapons. That won't make a lot of sense, but I'll explain it better next week. And then the final session is just going to be, we've been looking at all of this, where does the knife fit in? Because it's something that people always ask me, is the knife an archetypal weapon? So I'm just going to cover that briefly just to finish things off at the end. So we've got a couple more weeks of this, and then we'll be on to something new and exciting. But don't panic and wait for that. Come back next week, and I'm going to show you how to really hurt somebody with a handkerchief. And if that doesn't get you to tune in, I don't know what will. Until then, take care.